Zolani Mahola is the co-founder, singer and songwriter of Freshly Ground, the South African-based international hit band. Welcome, Zolani.
Thank you, Evan.
I would like to go right back to Jika Jika, rewind to 2003, more than a decade ago, although we will go further back than that during the course of the interview.
Okay.
So at that stage, this new band appeared, and they were quite excitedly, by some people in South Africa, called a new crossover band. And I remember speaking to Freshly Ground members at the time, yourself included, and you didn't really like that term. Now I suppose it doesn't really matter what people call you because the band is successful and has its own followers. But that crossover term has kind of followed the band around. How do you feel about it now?
I think nowadays there's so much of that happening that people kind of stop even bothering with that label, or at least I hope so anyway. That there's so much cross-pollination that's happening and should happen, and that I feel like it's not so much of a swear word now because it's kind of common.
And yet, in 2003, it kind of was a swear word. It was this thing that no musicians wanted to be.
Yeah, it was, because we were just coming out of the Mango Groove era, and people, they had such a high with Mango Groove, and then, it's a bit like Obama, it's like everyone was just so like, wow, he's God, and you're like, oh, he's just human. He's just like poking this little rat. That's what people started doing with Mango Groove, and then so that by that time, it just was like, oh, you cross over, you know what I mean? You just like, it's kind of old hat.
Because South Africa is a bit of a weird place to make music because of this concern sometimes with race and culture and how it all fits together.
Sure.
And here you've got this band that fitted the bill, I suppose, of a Rainbow Nation band.
Yes.
Now, do any of those labels still persist? Do they bother the band?
Yeah, nowadays we used to get so much of that question, and how do you feel about being, this Rainbow Nation thing, and this. We don't get that question really much anymore, which makes me quite happy.
I think it is a good sign.
Yeah.
The other thing I remember about that era of Freshly Ground, and I remember this one quite proudly, is being on some or other judging panel for young bands, and sitting on that judging panel, and Freshly Ground was out there. I was quite pro the band because I'd heard you live, and also perhaps because there was a bit of Cape Town loyalty. But there were a number of industry heavyweights who thought it would never land because it was this blending of things.
Was that the Johannesburg leg?
It was indeed.
Yeah.
So what do you think was the secret ingredient that meant that you proved all of those industry heads wrong because the fans loved it?
Yeah. Well, I think maybe it just had to do with having to prove ourselves. Coming away from that competition, that nationwide competition, and being told that we were that the judges felt we were contrived. We got a lot of bad kind of comments, and I think those really did push us to discover for ourselves actually what we were about, and just to go for it.
Because there are kind of two versions of Jika Jika. It was the debut album, but then record labels loved you and signed you up, and there was what was called the debut album, but already this product existed. That must be something of a rarity and a gem.
Yeah, I don't think there's very many copies of it lying around. I know lots of people for whom it's their favorite album. There's obviously not very many of them, just because there were so few copies of that album made. But yeah, it was a special time in a way, and it was a very scary time as well for a few of us in the band. It was the first time that we were ever in the studio. For me it was a terrible shock, because first of all, I didn't intend to be a singer, and then I got involved with an outfit before, and then got fired from that outfit, and then thought I would just happily go about, do my studies, and got involved with Freshly Ground, and then suddenly I was in the studio, whereas I was always just a performer, like a live performer. Just being in the studio and having to be technically on it was a huge shock for me.
Because around that time you were involved in performance, but you were doing things like Ella Fitzgerald tribute shows.
Well, I don't even know if I was doing that then. You'll tell me what year that was if you got it on your computer there. But I was on stage as an actress. That's what I was doing really primarily was theater work. So this music thing was quite a It was just a fun thing. And then to be in the studio with other musicians and with a producer or whatever, an engineer, and the pressure's on, and it's like take 30 or whatever, and I'm not nailing the note, and it was a terrible time actually. Yeah, I wouldn't like to revisit those days.
The stress of studio or the stress of being a young band in studio?
The stress of being a young singer in particular. Yeah, a young, untested singer. It was, because what had happened with that recording was that it was supposed to be just a few days in the studio. It was supposed to be just a demo. It became an album, which it wasn't meant to be. Yeah.
Did you think about packing it in then?
I didn't think about packing it in, but I was quite stressed out.
And what pulled you through?
What pulled me through was kind of having people around me who had been in that situation before, and having also was the music as well, like listening to the music afterwards. There's also something special about that, about never having heard the stuff recorded, which none of us had heard that particular stuff recorded, and for a few of us had never actually recorded our own material. There's something so special about hearing, even if it's bad. You know what I mean? There's something that makes you very proud.
Now, Freshly Ground's had some very interesting studio experiences because you've had to reinvent yourselves along the way and do things like bring in an entirely different producer with a whole new set of eyes and ears. And then also another studio experience probably led to one of your biggest international successes, which, if the tale is true, you were wandering around the corridors and there was Shakira, and the next thing you were on a song that was going to become the FIFA World Cup anthem.
Something like that, yes.
How did that all come about?
Well, we didn't actually ever we only bumped into her when she was in South Africa, and it was the opening ceremony of the World Cup. That was when we actually met Shakira. But what had happened was that our producer was this French guy who lives in New York. He had come and he'd recorded that album, Radio Africa, here with us in our studio, in our practice room. And then we took it to his studio in New York, where there happened to be this dude who was producing the track for Shakira. And a prerequisite for the whole thing was that they had to collaborate with an African artist, and he heard that we were there, and he checked out our stuff, and he liked it, and said, here's this track, listen to it, see if you can write another part and play on it. And we listened to it and we liked it, and the rest is history.
It seems quite mystical, I think, to many people who aren't involved in the music industry that those kinds of random things could happen.
It is mystical.
Because when South Africans hear that song, they go, of course, Freshly Ground is on there, it makes perfect sense, the World Cup is here.
Yes.
And it seems like there's a plan, but are you saying that it literally was two people who happened to know one another and get chatting?
Yeah, no, there was no plan. I mean, everybody pitched for that song. I mean, there were so many pitches. We pitched a song ourselves, but they didn't like it, I guess. But
did that song end up somewhere else?
That song, we actually never did anything with that song.
It's got to come out.
It has got to come out, yeah. One day, we'll see.
There are many World Cups to come, or maybe you can do something else with it.
I think it needs a new dress, that song. But we'll find the right vehicle for it.
And taking a song like that, which exists already, and putting your own things on that, does that feel like a very commercial activity rather than an artistic one?
No, because what we were doing with that track was that we actually wrote a whole other part that wasn't in the song at all. And I mean, it's just such a catchy chorus. Anyway, we had subsequently then, so we heard the thing and heard that it was, a Cameroonian thing, and then listened to the previous versions of it. And it was quite fun to be involved in it, especially also during the actual World Cup. I think it was just before the opening ceremony. I was walking around the streets. I think it was Yeovil or whatever. I was looking for somebody to do my hair, and there were all these guys there around there, Cameroonians, Tanzanians, people from all over, and they were like, "Oh, I can't believe you're singing the song. I grew up listening to the song," and I was like, "Wow, that is just so cool." It just really brought home the whole thing of the song being an African song and it being the World Cup song in South Africa, in Africa.
So Radio Africa, I think, was quite a seminal album for the band because it came at a time when, from what I could tell as an outsider, Freshly Ground was not hitting a ceiling, but you weren't quite sure where you were going to go as a band with that.
And that moment has come and come again and come again.
So
Yes.
what is it about this machine that has become very successful? You continue to get booked across the continent and elsewhere in the world. But it seems that there's this tension in the band about, do we still have a relevance? Can we still
Yeah.
make music? How do we keep this
How
thing
long
going?
have you been hearing this conversation behind closed doors? Sure, I don't know, Evan. I think we were so surprised by our success early on with the album Mahola. So surprised by it that I think it really did it took us quite aback, and you almost have to come. Yeah, we almost have to. Yeah, you have to come back from that, and not feel pressure to try and repeat that success, which is a very, very difficult thing to do. To not feel pressure, even if we say it's okay, we're just making music. Let's just write the music. You are somewhere inside you going, it's got to work. And I wonder if you'll always get that. If we'll always feel that pressure, you know. I mean, people still talk to us so much about that album and about the songs on the album and how much they've meant to them. And you, as an artist, you want to feel that people feel that way about all your work, or at least, you know, about your current work. You know what I mean? You don't necessarily always want to hear people talking about a decade ago, and that's the thing that always comes up, you know?
Now, there's an interesting thing as well about that album for me in terms of Freshly Ground, because it, for me, highlighted the fact that there are kind of two Freshly Grounds in South Africa, because that particular album had a certain part of the music press going, you know, have they sold out, or is this just a commercial album, or whatever it is.
Radio Africa.
There was a bit of a question around it. And at the very same time, I remember...
Love Take Me to the Dance.
At the very same time,
Yeah.
I was in a retail shop tour, and I saw one of these shops that has the top 40 CDs up there, and from 1 to 40 was just Radio Africa, and it was flying off the shelves. But that was it was kind of a high-level township shop. So there were these very different responses to Freshly Ground,
Yeah.
where call it the city music press was
Yeah.
saying, oh, we're not so sure about
Yes.
this album. Meanwhile, the township music shops were going, hey man, we love this, and we're just going to sell a whole lot of it.
Yeah.
Do you get that a lot with the band?
Well, Radio Africa, I really loved the process of recording that album. And at the time, I think many of us in the band did as well. But we've got such a, I don't know, now, it's such a typical Freshly Ground thing, and maybe it's just a typical musician thing, but now those same people who really loved the process, really, they're like, oh, that was a terrible process, you know, man, that work, why did we interpret the music that way, and we made so many mistakes, and I don't know, sometimes it's like that with a project. Sometimes like it's not a baby, you can't just love it.
Well, we'll talk about babies and just loving them in a little bit.
When it's out, you gotta just love it.
So you're saying there's kind of fallen out of love with some of those songs?
Yeah, and also just with the way we treated those songs, with how it was produced. I mean, I still love it. I still think it was a great. I loved I loved what came out of me through those sessions, and I love the product. Yeah.
Good.
But
It's good to love it, I guess.
But many guys in the band don't. So I sometimes feel a bit funny about that whole time.
What happens when you have to perform songs that you know the audience wants to hear, but the band really is tired of them, and you have a legitimate reason to be tired of them? You've played them thousands of times.
Well, for me, that's when I dig into my bag of theatrical tricks. Yeah, and one of which is just being in the moment, you know, and in that moment, those people they've got a big connection with that song, you know, or those songs, and they come at it with a passion and with a love that I can't but meet. You know, the circle completes.
So you're feeding off them?
Yeah, definitely. definitely. I think every moment needs to be new. For me, that's performance is my thing. As I said before, I mean, that's the thing that I love the absolute best. You know, when the audience and the people on stage are kind of are connected.
Now, it's interesting you mentioned some difficulties around your feelings of Radio Africa, because it was with Take Me to the Dance that you took many more musical risks.
Yes.
And I remember the band while you had laid those tracks down, but before they'd been put into their final format for release.
Yeah.
And you were all kind of resigned to the fact that, hey, this might be the album that breaks the band, not in the good part of break, but in the bad part of break, because people might just hate that you've gone electronic in some and almost rocky in others, and then gone very traditional in some others. It seems to have panned out, though.
It seems to have panned out. Yeah, yes and no. I'm not sure. I don't even know how to gauge anymore with people buying so little music. I don't know how to gauge whether a thing has been successful or not. I suppose maybe it's just it's radio play that would tell you, and we haven't gotten a whole lot of that. So where do you find your validation sometimes? I don't know. For me personally, I loved the process of making this album even more than I loved the process of doing Radio Africa, because that was really a brand new way of working for us, of bringing ideas that we had individually and then putting them into a pot and doing something completely different with it. So I just love that album.
We'll reconvene in 5 years' time and see if you still have it then, and you're going, that project was terrible.
No, me. I don't go back. I don't renege. I love it.
So on Take Me to the Dance, I think as a band, you also got another thing right, which is it has, I think, Freshly Ground's best socially conscious songs that no one's even really going to notice are socially conscious necessarily. They just have quite an intelligent and deep message behind them, but you can also dance to them. Did that come out of the process accidentally, or do you think it was because each of you were writing individual things, so they were quite meaningful?
There was no planning, if that answers your question. Yeah, and which is the case, has always been the case with us. Just in terms of the songs that we write, it's really just the best that comes out of us that gets kept, put on the CD.
I have another question about the band and its songs, because they start off with you coming up with a melody or someone else in the band coming up with a lick or a phrase or whatever it is. And then there's this phase where it goes into the song being written, and then this additional phase where the Freshly Ground magic gets added, where it turns into just this really, really big sound. And part of it is that there are a lot of musicians and therefore a lot of musical elements on stage.
Yes.
But part of it as well is you seem to have aced this big sound that often South African bands just don't get right. You can dominate a really big stage, whether it's a FIFA stage or countless African festivals and many international ones. How hard is it putting that layer in, that extra big sound layer?
Well, it's interesting that you say that, Evan, because we don't necessarily always feel that it's full enough, the sound, you know. So I'm glad to hear you say that it is a big sound. It happens as it happens, you know. We've considered playing with tracks, and that's something that we might do maybe somewhere along the line. But because that really gives you that kind of very, very elevated kind of huge sound, and maybe we'll do that, but we haven't needed to as yet. I feel like I haven't really answered your question.
Well, I'm pushing you. What do you mean? How is it possible that with Freshly Ground, that many people on stage, you can feel you need more? What more could you add? Bagpipes? I mean, what are you saying?
Yeah, we are half a football team. I don't know. I'm not sure. Maybe it's just a leftover paranoia from the early days. I don't know.
Because for me, there's definitely a palette that happens when you turn it into the stage versions of the songs.
Yeah, sure.
Because sometimes you've done quite a risky thing as a band. You've invited very small groups of people to quite intimate settings, a coffee bar-sized place, and said, you have 50 people, listen to the tune, see if you like them or not.
Yeah.
Which is a lot more revealing than when you're on a massive stage. Are you really nervous about that sound, that you want to add even more bits in?
No, I wouldn't. I don't think I'd put it like that. I don't think about nervous, but No, there's something about being in front of a huge crowd of people, and sometimes you do feel very small. Even if there's 7 of us on stage and it sounds like a lot, but sometimes it just doesn't feel like that.
Freshly Ground recording any new music at the moment?
We might be. That would be telling.
That sounds like you are, and you're just not saying so.
You know what we are doing is we're writing. We're writing music. We're trying to find yet another way of working. And we're looking to work with some different producers as well. So we're starting to do some work kind of in the latter part of this year. We are in the latter part of this year. Yeah.
So let's unpack a little bit of that mystique as well for people who are not kind of in the music industry. Mm-hmm. What is the importance of this producer person? And you're a great band to answer that because you've had such different experiences with it.
Well, a producer can, they can make a break. I mean, he or she is such an important person in the room because for such a long time, it's just the 7 of us, kind of just like, the whole time. And sometimes you need that outside ear, you need that big ear and that big eye who can say, okay, well that's where that works, and that's where that works for you because that's what traditionally what you always have been doing, but actually doesn't work. That person who can look at the bigger picture and make you sound better than you are, hopefully.
Is that an artistic role? Is it a musical role? Is it a mentor
role? It's a management role. It's a management role. It's an artistic role, definitely. Yeah, it's a voice. It's a voice. It's a very necessary outside voice that we definitely sorely need. Because you can go around in circles. My goodness, can we ever?
Well, we look forward to hearing what that process turns into. I spoke earlier about 2 kinds of Freshly Ground, and I think there's another sort of dichotomy that the band has because there's your recorded music, and then there's this very in-demand touring element that there are lots of countries who want you to perform at very big festivals, and one country that won't let you in. So what is it that these multiple audiences across the world get out of the band, do you think? Why do they want you there? Mm-hmm.
Well, I think I might have alluded to it before, or maybe I just plainly said that's my favorite part of the whole thing. Actually, is it my favorite part? I do quite enjoy writing as well. But yeah, I mean, there's something quite magical that happens when we're on stage because a lot of us are, we're just wanting to break out the whole time. And that's the space where we feel the most comfortable to do that. When sometimes in all eyes are on you, that's when you kind of magically can disappear. At once disappear and at the same time kind of completely be yourself, your true self. And I think that's what people are responding to because that might be our best self.
You must be very proud as a band that you've landed as well as you have across the African continent.
Yeah, for sure.
Because that wasn't a given.
That wasn't a given, and in fact, it wasn't even, we didn't even consider it. We wouldn't consider anything. I mean, as I said before, I mean, just that success that sort of early on in the game was such a wonderful shock that we didn't know what to expect. And so when we first started getting calls, across borders, it was excellent. And those people knowing all of the music and singing along and just bringing such a warmth and such a love. It was and still is incredible.
And do you know if that's coming from airplay in those African countries, or is it a more underground kind of network?
Well, South Africa's we're the America of the continent. We've colonized. I mean, there's so much South African television in so many parts of this continent. So, yeah, they know the music, they know the soapies, they know the stars. So, social what?
And then let's talk about the
broadcasting.
country that won't let you in. You were invited to Harari's festivals yet again, as you played many times, and the Zimbabwean government decided that based on a song you'd written, you were not welcome. Undesirable persons.
Well, listen, they didn't say it was because of that. I mean, we're kind of speculating.
It's a reasonable
It's a
speculation.
very reasonable speculation, yes.
You made a puppet showing the president in an unfavorable light and
Yes.
suggested that perhaps people shouldn't stay in power for all of their lives, and then you
Sure.
weren't allowed to get visas for the country.
Yeah, that did follow pretty soon afterwards. Yeah, it was very unfortunate, and the main reason for me that it's so unfortunate is because Zimbabwe is one of our best fan bases. You know, it's one of our favorite places to play, and always has been. And I'm itching to get back there and to play for our people.
Did you fear when you wrote Chicken for Change and when you made the video that might happen?
You know what? No, and I'm sure that other guys in the band were kind of more aware of possible repercussions, but me, we just went for it.
So does that mean it's something you regret? Because if you hadn't written one particular song, you could still play to many thousands of fans in one country.
Definitely not. Don't regret writing the song or the video. Definitely not.
How often does the band brush up against socio-political issues like that? Because you, as a writer, do quite often tackle things. You've tackled teenage pregnancy, you've tackled violence against women, you've tackled economic issues.
I think often because I write it in isiXhosa, it kind of slips a lot of that stuff, a lot of social commentary in isiXhosa. For some reason, it just slips under the radar, and hopefully it becomes more of a subconscious thing with the communities and than an overt kind of political or socio-political stance, which I think that over time I think that's maybe better if it is the case. Well, I mean, if it's kind of at the bottom of the well and everybody's drinking from it, but they don't realize, then hopefully, I don't know, then hopefully it becomes more of a deeper. A slower change, but a truer change. I hope.
I'm glad you said that because musically, for me, Freshly Ground has always been very interesting because I think it's quite subversive music. It's apparently simple and easy to dance to, and you're going to hear it on the radio. But there's quite a lot of African complexity and composing complexity going on underneath the poppy bouncy stuff.
Yeah.
Which might just be because there's a whole bunch of you, or are you trying to push musical boundaries?
We're not trying to push musical boundaries, we're just making music.
Do I keep asking, do you know what you're doing? And the answer is no. We just get into a studio and figure out where the music goes.
I think so. I think so. Yeah, it's what sounds good and what feels good and what feels true at the time.
So I want to talk about something entirely unrelated to music. And that is, there's a new person in your life called Zazi Mahola Kemp. What's it like being a young mother and having this new wonderful bundle of joy in your life?
Wonderful, not always. Yeah, it's a trip, Evan. It's I think when they say it's a journey, it's so cliched and it's so like silly, but actually it is. I mean, I look at him and then I think one day he's going to be a man. He's going to be a man like you. I mean, I wonder if your mother, your parents look back and they're like, oh my God, how did this little bean become this person? And how could they possibly appreciate all of this, everything that we went through? Of course, he's completely selfish right now. There's no way he'd appreciate anything, but I hope one day he will.
And is it harder because of your career than maybe it is for some other mothers?
I can't say. I mean, that's a bit like saying, was it hard to grow up without a mother? I mean, I guess, but you don't know what the alternative is. Yeah.
What have been the toughest times for you as a mother who's also the lead singer of Freshly Ground?
Definitely one of the toughest times was getting off a plane in Harare and then being at customs for an hour or so and then getting back on that plane with a little baby. that was special, special to say the least. But also, I mean, our job is so. There's so much. There's driving and planning. It's so much transport related, and it's grueling. You know, it's draining, and at those times when he's with me, it can be quite it can be very stressful.
Have you felt any change to your writing and your vocals and your lyrics now that you aren't just singing about one very important part of being woman, but you actually are a mother now?
Yeah, I do. I do feel. I feel more rooted in the world. I think just in general, and I think that does inform how I sing, from where I sing. I do feel definitely a depth that I wonder if I would have felt if I hadn't been a mother. Maybe I would, just by virtue of being a living, breathing human being, you know, who is 32, 3 years old. Maybe I would, but certainly the weight of that experience of having been a part of bringing life forward, I think I feel like it has changed me, the way that I sing, the way I stand.
The other side of being that front person is that you have a fair amount of the tabloid eye on you from time to time. Has that been in any way difficult? Have you been able to kind of shield any of that celebrity trouble?
It was only once that it got really hectic and horrible, and that was when I lost a whole lot of weight, and there were good responses, but there was a heck of a lot of backlash as well. And that was the first time that I'd ever had a negative public reaction, really, in all that time, or at least anything that outspoken. So it really, it made me kind of go like, wow, like what's going on here? Also because the nature of it was quite kind of. It was quite cold and quite very hurtful.
How do you deal with it? Because it's your weight, you should be able to do with it as you choose.
Yeah.
And it's not really anybody else's business.
Yeah.
But people do want a slice of their public stars.
Yeah. I definitely I got to know that, and yeah. How did I deal with it? I think in the way that I've dealt with everything, even with the positive that I've been getting all of those years, you know, years of being recognized in the streets, years of photographs, years of people wanting to have some of my time just because they're so excited. I think as much as I am an extrovert, as much as I do want to be out there, I've got a side of me that just wants to be at home, and is just so happy just being just here, you know, and having those few people around me who are just my friends and just loves of my life, that really bring home the fact that that's just fluff, actually, good or bad.
There's another, no longer a human baby like Zazie is, but there's another kind of a baby in your life, which is theatre, a real love of your life and something that you used to pour a lot of energy into. Do you think you'll ever go back to that stage?
I would love to. I do miss it. I mean, I do get to use the bag of tricks that I kind of accumulated at the theatre school. But it's different. It is very different, and I would love to flex those muscles again. But, you know, I will do that.
Do you have any roles in mind?
No.
It seems you do.
No, I actually don't. I don't. I'd love to get back onto the stage again, the theatre stage again.
I'm sure agents clamoring right as we speak. There are a number of other side projects that you've done, and most notably I'm thinking about the Eastern European gypsy-originated music that you started performing at amongst, a whole lot of different guises. What made you want to do that thing?
Well, it was a person who made me want to do that thing, and that person was the founder of the Kolonova movie band, Grada Jerry, who has recently passed away. Yeah, he just he was a character. He was definitely a one in a million, and he would come and teach me these Serbian, gypsy, and Slavic songs, and it was just such a thing that I would never have imagined myself doing. That it just felt right to be involved with it and just immerse myself in. So it was an adventure that I embraced, and I'm so grateful to him for having opened that door.
Because you learned some Serbian songs and sang them.
Yeah. It got me into a club in New York once because there was a Serbian bouncer, and he wouldn't let us in. And then I started singing, and he was like, "Oh, my friend, Kim, give me a hug," and we were in.
Are there any other side projects in mind?
Yeah, they are. Come on, Evan. Come on, you killing me. Come on. Yeah, I've got some things in mind. I've got thinking of doing something a little bit dancey, and I've also got a little bit of a rock thing on the burner as well. So we'll see.
Freshly Ground is a large band. That means a lot of personalities. And I know from some of the stories I've heard and the experiences I've had being in studio with you guys that keeping this multifaceted group of people going in the same direction is a beautifully complicated process. How does it work, though, at a purely creative level? How do you get all of the different voices into this one thing that you can then present to the public?
Yeah, I mean, it's a bit of $1 million question. And there are different ways, there are many ways to skin that cat. We're working right now kind of in smaller groups, just because it's so cumbersome, the vehicle. That's how originally it really worked very well. All of us getting into the same room and jamming and playing, and the chemistry was going, and everything was kind of easy and flowing. But over time, it's hard to find surprises, I think, within that huge machine. And we've sometimes found that it's better to just split off, and sometimes it works and sometimes it doesn't. There's no formula.
And are there little sub-partnerships within that? For example, you were mentioning Grada earlier, and you and Kyla performed in the Kolonova movie band. So do you have a favored writing partner within that, or does it work breaking it up?
No, yes. No, I guess I do have a favorite. Some things just work better than others. Some combinations work better than others. And I don't know, maybe if we're together for another, however long we've been together, those combinations will change. In fact, I hope they will change, because then we'll discover something very new. But we do tend to be similar kind of groupings, small partner, small collaborative.
And out of those things sometimes come these gems, and sometimes those gems you don't know are gems. For example, a song that did incredibly well for you was not going to be on an album. So share with us, please, the Doobie-Doo story.
Yes. Well, that song, I don't even remember exactly where that song came from. I feel like now it's become such a huge part of us, but I know that back then we felt like it didn't at all represent us in the way that we felt was us. And funny that it kind of became.
Because you were literally not going to put it on the album.
We literally were not going to put it on the album, but we were convinced by our producers then that we were crazy not to put that song on the album, and kind of reluctantly we did. And I'm sure it still is actually our biggest song to date.
Do you like performing it? Have you fallen back in love with this tune that you didn't like then?
Yeah, I do. I do actually like performing it, just purely to see the joy on people's faces, I think, when that song comes on. There's a few very magical moments in the set, and that's always quite a highlight. And if it's a highlight for the audience, then usually it's a highlight for me.
Are there any songs that you wish you could perform a little more often? gems that you particularly like that, for whatever reason, don't make it into sets?
No, we play what we like. Yeah.
Peppered with hits?
Definitely, peppered with hits. But I think all of the songs, if there are songs that fall away that we can't do just because of how long the set is. But we're always bringing stuff in from the past, from our catalog.
And then another question around how you put your music together for the live show. There are so many people on stage, and you've already got in that mix a synthesizer which can do whatever you want it to. There's a real danger in a lot of African music or African originated music that goes onto the global scene, where it turns into quite a generic kind of sound.
Yeah.
How do you make sure that you don't end up heading into that?
I don't know if we do.
I think you manage not to.
Yeah. I don't know, Evan. It's just whatever feels good. I mean, sometimes you actually want to. For some songs, you want to chase that sound, and kind of play with it, and then kind of mess with it a little bit. But it's just whatever feels good, really. That's the honest answer.
So you're painting this picture now almost,
Yeah.
which is if a bunch of musicians who can play their musical instruments quite well get together and just pursue whatever they want to, success and fame will follow.
No, listen. I mean, there's a lot of calculation that comes to play, and maybe I've downplayed that. Maybe I haven't put that across. It's a thing is crafted, but at the end of the day, it's got to feel good. If it feels good to you, then it's gonna feel good to other people.
Does that mean there's a lot of work crafting things and then abandoning them?
Oh yes. Oh, we spend a lot of time crafting, kind of shedding, and Evan, you're asking me. Yes, no. We do a lot of talking. We do a lot of discarding. We do a lot of, and then sometimes those songs don't even end up getting played or anything, or put on anything, even after we've worked on it for so many hours.
And if you could distill out of that some kind of a motto for people with whatever creative or business projects they have to cleave to, what might that be? Because you spend so long with these things, and then, like you said, chuck some of them away.
Mm-hmm. I think, especially if you're in a group, the more you play, the better it's going to be. Even if you don't use that, just the hours that you, or the time that you accumulate between you, will just make you better, and will naturally make the things that you produce better, much.
Zolani, thank you so much.
Thanks, Evan.
And to everyone from Freshly Ground that you're representing, hurry up with the new album.
Holla at you, girl.
Thank you so much.
Thanks.
Cheers.
Thanks, Evan.
Good. Thank you.